Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems and YouTube. Join Rox Burkey on today's show.
Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio. I'm Rox Burkey, and I am so excited tonight to be able to be talking with Terry Overton. Not only is she retired, I guess, professor at this point, but she actually was a professor of educational and school psychology. So the way she portrays some of her books is unbelievable. So welcome, Terry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm just delighted to have you. And I kind of want to make sure that our listeners learn a little bit about you. So if you could just take a couple of minutes and kind of not your whole, professional life, but how you decided to, really start transitioning from writing journals and white papers into writing novels.
Okay. That actually kind of happened by accident because I knew I wanted to write Christian work. I had written some devotionals and I have a Christian blog. So I kind of started out slowly. And I live on the border now. So my debut novel is Both Sides of the Border. So I live on the border now, but we had moved away for a short time. And while I was away, I just really missed it so much. And I decided I'll just write a Christian book about being on the border. Well, I started kind of writing about my experiences, which is one of the characters based loosely on my experience. Another American character in there is my mother, and that's like my mother on steroids. She's the comic relief in the book. But my character, who's one of the main characters in there, is, American who'd moved down to the border to become a professor. So a lot of that's very familiar with what I did. And my first year as a professor, I did go on a tour of Mexico to try to learn Spanish. And I was the only non-Spanish speaking person on the tour bus. So that was interesting. And that's incorporated into the book. But as I got into writing that story, it just kind of felt like there needed to be more, because I wanted it to have more of a women's Christian fiction kind of book. And so I started researching more about what was going on in the border. And based on what some of my colleagues here on the border were also telling me about the cartels, the more I researched it, the more I thought, well, that's got to be the message. It's the human trafficking and the drug smuggling and mainly the people that were riding all the way up Mexico on the death trains. And of course, this was before we had the influx of the Haitians that we do now. And it was before COVID. So we didn't have that big of a threat about disease, although that's mentioned in the book.
So Terry,
yeah.
When you say that you live on the border, Texas has a really, really big border. So could you narrow it down just a little bit as far as which area of the border? Because, some people think that El Paso is the border, and I know that's not where you are.
No, I'm actually kind of like, if you went any further, you'd either be in Mexico or in the water. I'm right on the Gulf Coast, down by Padre Island. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you mentioned that you did the research on the cartels and the human trafficking, when did you start that research? Because I think that's important as far as the background of your story.
Mm-hmm. I started hearing a lot about it while I was still here working at the university. And I know at one time we had to evacuate the building because there were shots were coming over across. Well, the campus where I was, the parking lot has a fence, which is actually what they call the wall now. Mm-hmm. So the parking lot where I went to my car, on the other side of it is Mexico. And so that university is right on the border. So at the time I was working here, I knew those things were going on. We had shots fired and there's bullet holes in some of the buildings that were coming across from the cartels to this side. So I learned about that, but I also heard from my colleagues who were going down into Mexico doing work to try to help people kind of escape some of the violence there. And And then as I said, when I started writing the book and I didn't live here any longer, I started using other sources of research, mainly what I could get on the internet that they could kind of sneak out around the cartel, because the cartel doesn't let you project a lot of the news, that's happening. You can't see it here.
Right.
But I did find some interesting ways of getting at it. And so the events that happened to the person riding the death train are actual events that actually happen here on the Mexican side of the border. So
Eva Johnson is a heroine from America in this book that's traveling into Mexico. Is that right?
Eva Jordan, yeah. And she travels, she's the one that's kind of traveling down on the tour bus.
Right, and learning Spanish and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But the other side of this, when you say both sides of the border, is really essentially, I think, a family.
Yes, it is. It's Dolores. She's 19-year-old sister and 2 teenage brothers. And their family in Honduras has come across some really bad times, as many families have there. And there's no way for them to make a living there. And she doesn't want to resort to prostitution to support her family, and which is kind of the only option there. So they lived out in the country, and that's to go into the city. There wasn't much for her to do. So they decided that they would get on this train and ride up to America and then get a job and send the money back home, which is a common story.
Yeah. And it's been going on for a long time. So, there's a little bit of obviously reality, but when you and I spoke before, Terry, because, we've known each other for a while now. When we spoke before, this book was done before the new surge on the border. And yet when you went to the publisher, it got delayed, right?
It did. And that was mainly a COVID delay, because they, some of their plants and people in their office was hit pretty hard, the, editors and people like that. So it got delayed, pushed back for months. Many of their books did.
So timeliness, I guess, it came out in March of 2021. And in that short release period, it has a lot of reviews, and they're positive reviews. Because I think of the heartwarming, story and emotion that you put into both sides of the border really hits home with people.
Yeah, and it's, it is a Christian work. So both of the women are kind of at different levels of their faith. And the woman on the train and her brothers, they're very strong. They're very strong in their faith, and they believe that God is watching them all through this. And they witness kidnappings and all kinds of things, murders and people falling off the train, and all those things actually do happen. But they believe that God's protecting them and watching them. And then Ava Jordan is not quite as mature in her faith, I'll say. And then as some of the crises happen towards the end of the book, and I don't want to give it away.
Oh, no, don't. No.
Where they actually meet is through catastrophic events. Then she begins to mature in her faith. And so they finally do meet, even though they have several near misses in different cities in Mexico, but they eventually do meet.
I think it's interesting that you have them crossing paths. I think that people need to see this viewpoint, especially from the faith side, because, it's a very honest telling. It's not, it's not something that's, it's fiction. I mean, technically it's fiction, but there's an awful lot of reality in this. So, I think people will really appreciate that. So this is actually your first release, right?
Yeah, this
as
is
an
my
individual.
first novel.
Okay. So your first release of a novel, and it came out in March of 2021. Now we're going to come up to a short break in just a second. When we come back, I really want to talk about the other book that you recently released. Terry, would that be okay?
Sure, that'd be great.
Great, then stick around.
Okay.
Marianne Fairmouth is a career consultant with 30 years experience in the national recruiting world, a multi-award-winning author in multi-genres, and a speaker that gives presentations to help you succeed. Her book, Revolutionary Recruiting, made the top 20 global list of recruiting books. Find her on Amazon, your favorite bookstore, or at fairmont.com.
To embrace your children's imagination, check out Diane Floyd Bame's books for kids. There's The Moonling Adventures, all about the animals in the Serengeti. And then there's Harry the Camel, learning to love yourself just the way you are. Then The Little Girl in the Moon. There's one about friendship, another one about the big ideas, which is an inspirational story. And then Tour Tycho Town, right there in Tycho Crater on the moon. All of Diane Floyd Bame's books are available at B4R Store.
Hello, I am the author Denise Bryson. My first book is The Things That Cross My Mind, Inspirational Poetry with Life Lessons. And then my audiobook is Love's Reality. And it is also inspirational poetry with a jazzy flair. And then my new book is The Sex, the Lies, and the Soul Ties. They're really short stories written from a poetic expression. And then I have my first children book series, the Blinky series, which the first book is called Meet the Coins, and it is both in English and Spanish. And then the new book, From Coins to Bills. I am the author, Denise Bryson.
Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems and YouTube. Join Rox Burkey on today's show.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. And I'm here this evening with Terry Overton. I'm Rox Burkey. And, welcome back, everybody. So Terry, when we left and we were talking about Both Sides of the Border, which is a novel that you released this year, you also decided to get extra busy this year and kind of go down another path that really is more storytelling. And it's, a very interesting story called America of We the People. So can you share a little bit about that one, please?
Sure. I have to say it's the most emotional book I've ever written. It's a collection of poetry and some commentary. It's a faith-based book also.
Uh-huh.
But it began on the day that our 13 Marines, soldiers, they weren't all Marines, were killed in Kabul. And I was very upset about that because we have a soldier who was there at the airport the day it was bombed. Now he was fine and he's back home now. And my grandson is also in the 82nd Airborne and had just returned from Iraq. And at the time that our other soldier, he's a friend of my grandson's, went over to Kabul, my grandson thought he was also going to be called up next, and he ended up not having to go. But, for days, we couldn't hear anything. When they go on these types of missions, they take their phones away and everything. We couldn't hear anything about what was going on there. So I started writing. I've been concerned as a conservative Christian about what's happening in our country anyway. And I just began writing poems and short essays, commentaries on these events. And then the more I thought about it, my dad is a 3 Purple Heart Korean War vet.
Wow.
And he had asked me in lieu of his birthday, which is September 23rd, in lieu of his birthday, could we just make a donation to Toys for Tots or Tunnels to Towers or something like that? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to write this book, and part of the proceeds go to Tunnel for Towers. And I had to go through that process to get approved to be affiliated with that organization. But the book is geared toward soldiers, veterans, those who've been lost in terrorist attack. It's got some in there on 9/11. It's got a couple of poems for my dad about, the Korean War, which he didn't talk about much until he got older. It's got poetry in there about our flag, and the disrespect that's happening with our flag. It's got a poem in there. When the soldier who was in Kabul finally was able to talk with us and tell us he was okay, he sent us kind of a collection of pictures, and it was himself and some of his buddies, like when they first arrived there. They were kind of fresh, and this first time they're going into probably what was going to be combat situation. And then he sent us a picture after, and I could not believe the difference in his face. And so there is a poem in there to him specifically It's a young soldier goes off to war, and it's basically about the change in his face once he sees what death looks like, and once he sees what hate looks like. And so those are the kinds of the poems that are in there. My son is also firefighter. He's captain of a fire department, and he knows a lot of people. He's gone out and been deployed at, hurricanes and things like that as a first responder. His wife is a helicopter flight nurse. And so sometimes they even meet at the same scene. He's there on the fire truck and she flies in with the helicopter. But so we have a lot of people in our family that are either in the military, were in the military, they're first responders. My husband was in law enforcement. And so the book kind of, I guess, evolved into writing poetry and commentary for all of those professionals. Now, there are a couple of satirical works in there, like about vaccines, things like that, and about the election that happened. And so they're not quite as serious. There's a little levity in there.
One thing I thought was very interesting about this particular work is that you're really trying to focus on those that have served this country either in the military or some other way, and they have a real bent on being patriotic toward this country. And I thought it was interesting that you also included some things on Benghazi as well as Afghanistan and some other things. So how much research did you end up having to do to get some of these details, or is it just because of those people that you have around you?
The people around me certainly contributed a lot. I know when I told my dad what I was doing and that the donations were going to go to Tunnel to Tower, in honor of him, then he sent me some letters that he had and some articles about the Korean War. But other than that, a lot of it was just, trying to find out what I could on my own research or talking to people who were in the military. And so that's kind of how that came about. Then there's a lot of famous quotes in there as well about patriotism and having faith in America. So they came from, Ronald Reagan, Thomas Jefferson. I mean, there's all kinds of Mark Twain, believe it or not. There's some very interesting quotes in there from him. Albert Einstein, and, talking about we don't have to worry about bad people. We just have to be sure good people do something about the bad people, those kinds of quotes. And so they're kind of interspersed in there as well. The thing was, it was very therapeutic for me to write it. And
Really?
I ended up writing the entire thing, and it's not a big book. I mean, it's 100 pages, but it took me about 4 weeks. And then I was ready to put it out there and go through the process of getting it, published as an indie publisher, as a self.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I'm telling you, it was very long nights, very long days, my husband not eating, the dog not getting walked. But
so is that actually at this point your first indie published book?
yes, it is.
Did it make you feel different to publish as an indie, an indie book as opposed to going through the publishing house? Was it different from your perspective?
It was very liberating, I
Really?
want to say, because there's, I have with my publisher, Ambassador International, who published Both Sides of the Border, I have 10 other books on contract or in process of coming out, and they have been working on getting those out since 2019, 2020. And I know they had setbacks with COVID and so on, but being able to do it yourself, you control your timeline, you can go through several different covers with people, if decide what you want. You can really find out anything. Like once you've been published, you say, oh, okay, so I'm supposed to have a book trailer. So then you can go find somebody to do a book trailer. It's just a matter of learning, I guess, how to do it and then going through the process. So it's very enjoyable. The only thing that's frustrating sometimes is, if the template doesn't like the way I formatted something. But other than that, it wasn't bad.
So in the back of this particular book, do you have, the references as far as where you got some of this information and some of the letters and things like that?
I don't really. I don't have, having been a professor and we had to cite every word we ever even
That's true.
paraphrased.
Yeah.
And the one thing about writing fiction or writing poetry, I don't feel like I have to do that. Now, I did have to go through, of course, and make sure all the quotes were public domain and, you know, that sort of thing, and then go through the copywriting process. I did get it copyrighted.
Okay.
But no, I didn't put the citations down of anything.
An America of We the People, to me, is a very powerful title. Did that come to you initially, or is that something you worked hard to get just that way? Because it's a compelling title.
Well, it's the first few words of the Constitution. It's in the preamble. And it's like, what better way to get the message across that America is of we the people? It is not of government. It is not of politicians. It is of us. Unfortunately, as you might notice in some of the poems, I talk about the us having fallen asleep, and that's a concern to me. That you know, there's not enough action going on, or not in the right way, maybe.
So we just ran into the point where we need to go listen to our sponsors, Terry. So stick around and we'll come back and learn about how people can see you and find you and all that.
Okay.
Publishing marketing package for authors. A $1,500 value, save 40% now. Includes a 6-piece marketing kit of 250 bookmarks, 250 business cards, 250 postcards, 1 table banner, 1 table runner, and 50 download cards, plus book cover design, ebook creation, PDF setups, upload to Ingram Spark, scroll placement, video commercial, and interview on IBS, plus much more. Email bourgeoismedia@look.com for details or bourgeoismedia.com.
Hi, I'm Mel Greenberg, author of Running with Our Eyes Closed, book 1 in the Empty Nested series. To the world, Samantha has the perfect life. 3 wonderful children, a loving husband, so she thought, and a life split between Dallas and Italy. When her youngest leaves for college, it all comes crashing down, forcing Samantha to re-examine everything. Over 7 days in one of the most romantic countries in the world, Samantha faces the past she thought she'd overcome and begins to redefine her role as a woman, a wife, and a mother.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? Well, during COVID, almost all of us have been doing just that. I'm Charlotte Canyon, award-winning author, actress, and speaker. And my book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, shows you how you can revive, thrive, and survive with 4 golden rules. You have to love one another. You have to respect one another. You have to have patience with one another. And most of all, you've got to forgive one another. I'm Charlotte Canyon, and I approve this message.
Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems and YouTube. Join Rox Burkey on today's show.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Show, and I'm here with Terry Overton, and I am so excited to talk to her and learn about everything that she's doing. 10 books are in the works, and you know, actually, we're going to kind of tickle the audience a little bit. You have another book that's going to be released in November, so that'll be 3 books this year that you're going to make available. So a little sneak peek. Tell us about the November release.
Okay, it's a children's book, so it's very different. It's called The Oddball Ornaments and the Story of Christmas. And it's a bunch of misfit ornaments that are on the verge of getting thrown away probably. But the thing is, all their little lives, if they're actually animated, they believe that Christmas is only for the purpose of putting them up on the tree so people can adore them. They have no clue what Christmas is about. So in this story, they go on a little adventure and they learn what Christmas is really about. So that's the new one coming out. It's can be read by 3rd graders and up. It's not a picture book. It's just kind of an early reading book. So, but it's a story I think older kids would like as well.
Well, if you're giving a message, sometimes that's lots of fun. Now, I really like that you're having this particular story come out in November, because people can order this and read it together after Thanksgiving if they want to, right?
That's correct. It's the pre-order date supposed to be coming out on the 16th of November. So it's already up on Amazon as a pre-order.
Well, that's very exciting. So, and the name of that one again, Terry, is what? I'm sorry?
Oddball Ornaments.
Oddball Ornaments. I like that one. I really do. So there we go. We've talked about the 3 books that are this year's events for you. I mean, it's an honor to talk with you. So where can people find more information about Terry?
Okay, just a couple of kind of social media things. I do have a web page. It's authorterryoverton.com. So that's one. I'm on Facebook just as Terry Overton, so they can find me there. And then I have several other events coming up. On the 6th of November, there's a Maranatha book event, which is Jesus Come to Us. I had to learn the meaning of it. I was invited to go to it, and I thought, I don't know that word. But it's going to be 10 Christian authors there in Paris, Texas. So anybody that's in the Northeast, part of the state might want to check that out. And then in Boerne, Texas, on December 11th, I will be there doing a book signing. Then I'm, once you get onto Facebook, and you can message me there if you need other information. I do have a blog. It's not a regular kind of a blog. It's when I feel, I'm not one of these people that blogs every week and it just clutters up your mailbox. It's just when I feel the need, or the urge to do it. And that's Terry Overton Books.
Okay. And so where you're going to be, the events that you're going to be seen at, can they be seen on your website so that is there like a calendar or something?
Yes, they're on my website, and they're posted all over Facebook, so they can see that there as well.
And, I think it's important for people to know where they can find your books. We spoke about 3 books today. America of We the People, right? Both sides of the border. And my ornament one. Oh. Oddball, that's it.
They are misfits, but it's oddball ornaments.
Oddball ornaments.
Yes.
So where can they be found? I know you said that Oddball Ornaments is on pre-order for Amazon, but how about the other 2?
Both sides of the border, you can find that anywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can order it on christianbooks.com. It's the bookshop. It's kind of all over the place. Oddball Ornaments is only on pre-order. And then America of We the People right now is just on Amazon, but I did send it in to be your bookstore, so they could offer, try to get it there if they'd like.
Awesome. That is so very exciting. Terry, I hate to tell you this, but we're closing in on the end of the show, and I really have enjoyed learning about you and meeting you. And I can't wait to see your November release. I think I've got to get that pre-order myself.
Oh, well, that's great. You can buy more than one.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening, Terry Overton. And I recommend that everyone on here go check out her stories.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching or listening to the Indie Beacon Show, produced by Beyond Bourgeois for the Authors Marketing International LLC. Copyright 2021. Voiceover by Beyond Bourgeois. If you would like to be a sponsor of the show, please email us at authorsmarketing@outlook.com. If you would like to be on the show, please complete the form found on our website at indiebeacon.com. You may also watch previous year's shows on the website. Music is Frolic of Words, created for Indie Beacon